I think we're headed to a shutdown, and we think the American people are going to suffer because these guys won't do the right thing.
Now, with the government shutdown just a few days away, Donald Trump and the White House, according to Politico, are preparing to, quote, exert maximum pressure and pain during this government shutdown on country. As part of doing this, the White House is preparing for mass firings across federal agencies.
So now you've just heard the news that the United States government is shutting down in the next 2 days from the date of me making this video. And if what's happening in America right now doesn't change, millions of people are going to have their lives completely ruined. Now, to put it simply that even a dog could understand, funding for government operations is set to expire in just 2 days. That is, unless Congress passes a continuing resolution or full appropriations. However, the US judiciary warns that it may not be able to actually sustain operations beyond the date if no funding deal is actually met. And unfortunately, emergency funds are already running out. And now because of this, OMB have actually asked federal agencies to prepare for mass layoffs, mass firings, and mass reductions. And this is...
Hello brothers and sisters, I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you are watching me from now. The US government is at the verge of shutting down. Now, there is a problem that is happening right now. The Congress and the president and the presidency are not getting along. Now, they had a meeting yesterday, but it never bared fruits. The US vice president has come out to say that the government is almost shutting down. Is the US at the verge of collapsing? Is God punishing the United States of America? Let's watch this video, then have a really quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
I don't know if y'all know this or not, but the government may be about to shut down. So basically, the funding for the government expire here shortly. I think September 30th. So basically, what happens is the Senate has to have 60 votes to pass the budget. There's not 60 Republicans. So that means some Democrats have to vote for this budget. The Democrats basically said, what we gonna get for our vote? We not just giving y'all our vote just because. Like we got to negotiate, which is typical of the process because you have to negotiate to get these people vote. Trump said he ain't negotiating, just do it without the Democrats. Thing is, you can't do it without the Democrats because you need 60 votes. They don't got 60 votes. So now the White House and Trump them saying that, oh well, if the government shut down, we're just gonna fire a whole bunch of federal workers, and they're instructing their agencies to create a mass firing plan. This is because the Republicans don't want to negotiate the budget, which they should do because they need Democrats to pass it. Yeah, and the reason that the government always is about to shut down is because instead of creating a budget and doing the appropriation process like they're supposed to, they just keep on doing continual resolutions, which is basically just kicking it down the road.
Everyone is panicking about the government shutdown just 4 days away, but let's take a step back. Maybe this is exactly what the bureaucracy needs. Trump's team is saying it's time to exert maximum pressure, and the first example is the EPA. From 15,000 employees down to barely 1,000. And here's the truth. America won't even notice the difference. That tells you just how bloated DC really is. And the EPA isn't alone. The Department of Energy already had reviews to cut non-essential roles, even in the nuclear programs. Agriculture, forestry, and the interior, forest services, and soil conservation could shrink as well. HUD, Housing and Urban Development, it's on the chopping block, exposing how much we really rely on governments for low-income programs. Foreign aid and USAID already slashed earlier this year and likely to be hit again. A clear signal the White House is saying if it's not here at home, it's not our priority. This shutdown is a stress test. It's going to show us which agencies are essential and which ones are dead weight. Painful? Maybe.
Hey, Donald, your dark past is going to surface, whether you like it or not. And it's so obvious right now that this government shutdown that you want to take place so badly is actually the Jeffrey Epstein shutdown, because that discharge petition, which is about to have 218 signatures to force a vote as early as next week to release the Epstein files, you don't want that petition to be signed by the new Democratic Congresswoman-elect Adelita Gravalha. In fact, You've ordered MAGA Mike Johnson not to swear her in as a congresswoman, specifically because you don't want the Epstein files being released. In fact, you ordered MAGA Mike Johnson to shut down Congress on Monday and Tuesday, the 2 days before the shutdown is set to take place. 2 voting days where there should be discussion and an attempt to work out a deal to avoid a government shutdown. You ordered MAGA Mike to shut down the House of Representatives. Why? Because the discharge petition can be signed and the Epstein files could be released. That's what would take place Monday or Tuesday. So now Congresswoman-elect Adelita Gravala from Arizona's 7th Congressional District is not getting sworn in, despite the fact that she beat her opponent in that congressional district race in that special election that took place this week by like 40 plus points. I want to show everybody what's really going on here as Donald Trump tries to cover up his dark past. But oh, Donald, the Democrats, and with the help of Republican Thomas Massie and some others, are not backing down. And on Friday, we got a 3rd batch of documents from the Epstein estate. And oof, you know whose names were listed? More Donald Trump friends like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and other oligarchs. Their name was mentioned in that 3rd batch. But first, I want to show you this. This is what has Donald Trump absolutely terrified. His name is Thomas Massie, Republican Congress member from Kentucky. He's working across party lines with our friend Democratic Congress member Ro Khanna to get this discharge petition to the 218 signatures needed to force a vote on the House floor to release the Epstein files, despite Donald Trump saying it is a hostile act by any Republican to now support the release of the Epstein files. Just think about that. A hostile act, and Donald Trump is willing to do the Jeffrey Epstein government shutdown, imperil our country because Donald Trump doesn't want the Epstein files being released. Here's what Thomas Massie.
Fun fact, it is incredibly rare for a government shutdown to happen when the two sides that cannot agree are in the same party. Even more fun fact, it's only happened 3 times in American history. Even funner fact, 2 of those 3 times are under Donald Trump. Government shutdowns happen under Democratic and Republican parties. But the issue is usually that neither side has majority, or one has the House and the other has the Senate, so they can't, as Congress, actually pass things through. So Democrats and Republicans have to come to a solution. But when you have all 3 branches of government and the Supreme Court, usually it's under an agenda that you just carry out. Who's fighting you? Republicans have the majority in the House and the Senate. They have the majority in Congress. So seemingly, there should be no disagreement. They should just be able to pass things. So this rarity that's happening right now is because, I just want to stress enough, it's because Republicans cannot get on the same page and vote for the same thing. And they are pushing propaganda that screams, it's because the radical leftists want... They can want whatever they want. They do not have the power to prevent Republicans from doing literally anything. And they do not have the power to pass any laws whatsoever right now. If you truly believe that the government under Donald Trump cannot shut down because Republicans disagree, it'll shut down because Democrats want transgender surgeries in every cat and dog that we eat, then you don't know probability. Because I would have said it's rare before Trump came on the scene because it had only happened 1 time in 1980 under Carter. But it's happened twice since then, and both from 1980 to today, both times have been under Trump. And it's about to be 3.
The U.S. is on the brink of a potential government shutdown. The question that is asked a lot is, has this happened before? And if so, how long did it last? And we can answer both of the questions right now. Yes, the government has shut down before. In fact, since 1976, there have been 10 shutdowns. The longest shutdown was in 2018 for 34 days. You can also see in this chart that there were some shutdowns that only lasted a day, some lasted 2 days, some lasted 16 days. As the shutdown is looming ahead of us, what are some questions that you want answered?
Shut the country down. I hope that the Democrats find a backbone among them and say, we're not going to do this. They do not have the Congress or the Senate or the presidency. Let them shut the whole goddamn thing down. Hearing Democrats say, oh, well, I want these 1, 2, or 3 things in the bill to pass, otherwise we're going to pass it. Fuck off. With all due respect, screw off, you Democrats. You got people in concentration camps. You got people in masked and unmarked cars. You got military in Portland. You have armed National Guard all throughout this country now. You have basically a fascist dictator who's tanking the economy, who's going after his political enemies. But if he agrees to these terms, we're going to sign the bill because we want to be reelected for the midterms. We want to find common ground. No, you're not. Burn it down. If that's what has to happen, then let it happen. Martin Luther King said that a true leader is not a searcher of consensus, they are a molder. Democrats and Republicans are searchers of consensus. They tell people what they want to hear to make them feel good, so you'll give them $10. Screw off. This needs to happen. For 6 months, I pushed a general strike, and the majority of people that didn't want to do it, I can't afford to. I'm not going to do it. It's not going to work. I can't afford to. I have a job. Everybody watching this video has a job, has a family, has car payments, has gas, has electric bills, has to buy food. All of us do. That is white privilege in its purest form.
Are we really going to call this what this is? Chuck Schumer and all you crazy liberals? Let's call it what it is. You're holding the government ransom for illegal immigrants. Forget the people who elected you. Forget the Constitution in which you're supposed to uphold. You want more money to pay for illegal immigrants to have medical insurance. But what about American citizens who can't afford medical insurance? What about Americans? What about us? You said you were for the people. I mean, I know better, but the people that voted for you, the lost liberal constituency that you have, a government shutdown? Why? So that you can support your new voter base, illegal immigrants. That's all it is. You are holding the government and the American people ransom. And it's time for your people to realize that and wake up. Put an end to this. Vote these people out. They've been in office for decades, and they have not done anything for you but open the borders.
The U.S. federal government is facing a possible shutdown tonight at 11:59 p.m. IF Congress fails to pass the necessary funding. Many government agencies could close their doors. This includes departments dealing with national security, immigration, and other essential services. The debate is tied to disputes over budgets, party priorities, and funding for agencies like ICE. Lawmakers have been negotiating for weeks, but tensions remain high between Democrats and Republicans. Officials warn that even a short shutdown could disrupt federal operations, delay paychecks, and impact millions of Americans. Some fear that immigration enforcement, public safety, and social services could be particularly affected. Others point out that previous shutdowns have caused backlogs and uncertainty across government programs. Citizens are asking, will Congress compromise in time? And what does this political standoff mean for everyday Americans? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this could affect schools, airports, and government offices nationwide.
The U.S. government is going to be shutting down in about 24 hours, and that is according to Vice President J.D. Vance. And there are 5 major impacts that this is going to have on our country. So first is our court system and the massive legal delays that we're going to experience for every day that our government is shut down, specifically immigration court. Most immigration court staff will be furloughed, so hearings for asylum, deportation, and green card cases will be postponed, which if you've been following the news in the past few months, that is a lot of cases. Second is all federal workers are either going to be furloughed or unpaid. This means hundreds of thousands of federal employees will be sent home without pay, and President Trump already said that a lot of these employees will be permanently fired. Now, essential workers like TSA and Border Patrol will be forced to continue working, but won't be able to collect a paycheck until after the government shutdown ends. Now, this leads to the next major effect, which is air travel disruption. The big thing here is the FAA will halt all training and hiring for air traffic controllers. This is going to result in a TSA TSA staffing shortage because some of them are going to quit because they're not getting a paycheck, and then they can't hire new employees. So the longer this government shutdown lasts, the more delays we'll see at airports. Now, the fourth major effect is the closure of national parks and federally funded museums. Several national parks, national monuments, and federally funded museums will be forced to shut down because, well, they won't have any workers. Now, in recent government shutdowns, some national parks actually stayed open, but they saw a massive increase in overflow trash and pollution because nobody was there to pick it up. And coming in at number 5, which might be number 1 in importance, and that is an overall economic decline of the United States. Now, there's so many ways that this affects the US economy. I would not be able to list them all in this short video. One being that, federal contractors and small businesses that rely on government work won't be able to get paid, but they estimate that for every 1 week that the US government is shut down, the economy loses $1 billion. So to everyone who's going to be affected by this government shutdown, which is pretty much all of us, hang in there. And my question to you is, do you think this government shutdown was avoidable?
We are just a few hours away from a government shutdown. So what can you expect if it actually happens this time? And it looks like it will. First, you have to understand that a government shutdown is not random. It's scheduled. And if it happens, it doesn't mean the US government is broke, and it doesn't mean the US government has no money. The US government has plenty of money. If the government shuts down, it means Congress has failed to do the one job that it has. See, the US government runs on a fiscal calendar from October 1st through September 30th. And every single year, it is Congress's job to find a way to fund the government before the fiscal year ends. That means it's Congress's job to figure out how much money each department and agency will get in their budget and figure out which priorities will and will not be funded. And if September 30th comes around and there is no spending plan approved by both the House and the Senate and signed by the president, no government agencies or departments get their budget allotment, so they don't have money to operate. Then they have to close, and ultimately the government shuts down. And tomorrow is September 30th, and we are not even in the ballpark of a deal to keep the government open. Okay, so now that you know how government shutdowns happen, let's talk about what happens when the government shuts down. During a shutdown, the federal government must stop all non-essential functions until Congress passes a spending bill. Each agency and department determines what work is essential and what is not. And in this Trump administration, the executive branch also has a big say. The federal workers who are considered non-essential will be furloughed, and agencies and departments that are considered non-essential will close. Now, instead of running down a list of what is considered non-essential and will be shutting down because it's a pretty long list, it's actually much easier to tell you what is considered essential and will be staying open. So Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, military operations, law enforcement, U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, and Air Traffic Control, all those departments will stay open. However, depending on how long the shutdown lasts, the people who work at those departments and agencies may have to go to work without pay. The longer the shutdown lasts, the worse things get. Almost immediately after a government shutdown, the national parks will close. So if you have a trip planned to see one of our beautiful national parks in the next week or so, you may want to reschedule. And if the shutdown lasts more than a few days, passport processing could slow down.
The US government will officially run out of money at the end of September. If Congress can't strike a deal by then, the government shuts down at midnight on Tuesday. So what does that mean for Americans? Millions of federal workers won't get their paychecks. National parks and museums will close. But here's the thing, tens of thousands of federal employees, including airport security staff, air traffic controllers and the military, still have to go to work without pay. Social security payments could be delayed too. We've seen shutdowns before, but this one could hit differently. The White House has asked federal agencies to prepare plans for mass layoffs. We're not talking about temporary furloughs where workers come back once the government reopens. These would be permanent. Bear in mind that about 300,000 federal workers have already been laid off or left their jobs this year. So the stakes are high and the odds don't look good. Congress last agreed a spending bill back in early 2024. Since then, they've just rolled over existing spending. Even that looks unlikely to pass this time. It would end key healthcare subsidies, so Democrats say they won't vote for it. President Trump cancelled a meeting with leading Democrats this week. In 2018, Trump walked away from negotiations in his first term. The result, a 34-day shutdown, the longest in US history. Now the clock is ticking and millions of Americans are about to feel the impact.
The Democrats are going to shut the government down. They're going to shut it down September 30th. And here's why they're shutting it down. Even though the House passed the continuing resolution, even though this is the same budget that Schumer voted for just a few months ago, they're going to shut it down because they want to give illegal immigrants, they want to give them hundreds of billions of dollars in medical coverage. That's what this shutdown's about. Russ Vought says, go ahead and make my day. I'm going to lay off tens and tens of thousands of workers, government workers, permanently. Their jobs are going to be eliminated. Guess what? We don't need them, and we're tired of paying for them to do nothing. So those are getting eliminated. So go ahead, have a shutdown, make my day. I do not think it'll impact Virginia election. Those people are voting for Spamberger anyway. Follow me on social media at JF Radio Show, at JF Radio Show. This is a banner day. I want to see your comments here. Don't forget, tomorrow, Godzilla wins football picks 9 to 11 a.m. across our network. Don't miss that.
Figured out Trump's little secret, and he's going to try to pull it off right in front of us. Now, I don't know if he's going to let the government shut down, but if he does, I know he's not going to lose a wink of sleep over it, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics, he just released a 73-page report on what they'll do if the government shuts down. And in that 73-page report was the news that they will not release a September jobs report on Friday if the government is shut down. Also won't release weekly unemployment claims. And in the middle of October, if the government's still shut down, they won't release inflation data either. And on top of that, they're going to stop collecting data from employers the whole time, which would virtually guarantee October's report is corrupted and incomplete, not unlike every sentence out of Trump's mouth. And the timing really couldn't be better, because a major job market researcher just announced that seasonal hiring is the lowest it's been since 2009, which, if you recall, was a catastrophic recession. And of course, everyone knows the job market is trash because of Donald Trump's tariffs and the nonstop chaos in the economy, when all employers want is stability. But Trump wants to hide from it, because if you don't count it, it isn't real. Just like back in 2020, when a whole ship full of passengers who were sick desperately needed a dock so that the passengers could find a hospital. Trump didn't want them to dock here, not because he was worried about getting doctors sick, but because he didn't want to count 14 cases. Because really, when it comes down to it, that is all we are to people like Trump. Numbers. If we're good, he claims them, and if they're bad, he either hides from it or blames us for it. Unfortunately for Trump, because we live in the real world, not in mansions with golden ballrooms, we don't need the BLS to tell us it's terrible. All we have to do is ask ourselves one question. Is Trump still the president? We see you, Donald, and we'll see you at the midterms.
So why is the government going to shut down? What happens when it does, and how do Democrats stand to benefit from it? Given that the government is likely to shut down on September 30th, you should have a baseline understanding of what that means, because misinformation is already flooding the zone from Republicans and even some centrist Democrats who want to sabotage their own party's efforts to fight back. So first, why is it happening? Well, every September, the government runs out of money, and it shuts down unless Congress appropriates more money, because Congress has the power of the purse. Now, what's interesting about the appropriations process is that it's subject to the filibuster, and we all remember that the filibuster is where senators can yap, and effectively prevent the bill from passing. The threshold to get past the filibuster is 60 votes in the Senate, and there are 47 Democrats and independents aligned with Democrats, meaning Democrats can block any appropriations bill that they disagree with. So what happens when the government shuts down? Well, a lot of it doesn't. A lot of people think that Social Security checks aren't going to go out or Medicare is not going to be funded. But in fact, every major entitlement program stays funded through any shutdown because they're mandatory spending programs. So Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the military all remain funded through any shutdown. And so does the USPS, because it turns out the real boys in blue actually make enough money through the U.S. Postal Service to stay in business. But every other government agency does lose funding, and more importantly, many of them are not legally allowed to operate. So the FCC, the FTC, the CFTC, the SEC, the EEOC, all the CCCs, they all shut down. And some of their operations can continue if they're deemed essential to protecting life and government property. But any federal government worker working through a shutdown does not get paid, which would include ICE agents. And what this effectively means is that outside of providing entitlements and keeping the military running, the government does not operate. And this has two practical effects on the Trump administration. One, the government is no longer performing its day-to-day tasks, which has widespread impact on the economy. Think about all the boring shit that government does: federal contracting, licensing, permitting, and enforcement actions, like when the FCC is bullying Jimmy Kimmel off the air. That's no longer going to be possible because those people aren't going to be at work. And the second most important impact, the Trump administration cannot enact the big beautiful bill Because the big beautiful bill was only a budgetary plan. If Congress doesn't actually appropriate the money to enact it, it won't take effect. So how do Democrats play this to their advantage? Well, shutdowns, when they go on long enough, tend to piss people off because they can't get their passports, they can't go to national parks, their business can't get their government contract approved. And polling shows that when this happens, people are more likely to blame the Republican Party because they know Republicans are in charge of government. And this is not to mention that people are very pissed off at the government and they expect Democrats to act. So the idea is that they use this advantage to leverage concessions out of the Trump administration, like restoring Medicaid funding or potentially defunding ICE or withholding support for Israel. And how that plays out depends on how the American public reacts to the shutdown and whether Democrats can strategize a plan to win it. Which at the moment doesn't look great because Chuck Schumer clearly does not want to fucking do this. And people like John Fetterman are actively working against it. But Chuck Schumer doesn't really have a choice because the base has put too much pressure on him to act. So,
hello brothers and sisters, I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you are watching me from. Now, the US government is threatening to shut down. And this is not because there is no money in the US, but it is because of a disagreement that is coming between Congress and the presidency. Now, there are so many things that should be understood, those that are ongoing in the US at the moment. And let's just be very, very honest and be sincere to ourselves that however much people are saying that the US is greater than it was last year, that the US is greater than ever before, but you can see problems and you can see main potholes in the way. You can see so many other things that are arising in the US that were initially not happening. And you might ask yourself, why is the US government on the verge of shutting down? Now, a government shutdown in the US only happens not because the government is running out of funds or something, but it is because Congress fails to pass or the president fails to sign appropriation bills. You know, appropriation bills, those are bills that are used to fund some of the things that happen in the US, or they're used to fund some government activities, you know. And in this case, there must be a solution so that the government can be at peace with the Congress, or the Congress might be at peace with the government, you know. Mr. Donald Trump, the president of the US, has not been that good with most of the things that are ongoing in the US. And we've seen most criticism on his side. Most people feel like the president is pressing more on the people than he said, that there are a lot of things that are happening that are not people-centered. And this is mostly why we are seeing almost a shutdown in the US. Now, J.D. Vance, the vice president, came out yesterday to say that the government is almost shutting down if there won't be a consensus between the president and the Congress, both Democrats and the Republicans, because they met yesterday, but they never came to an agreement. So is this a punishment from God? Most people are arguing out that this might be a punishment from God because so many things have been happening in the US and a lot of disasters are still coming on the way. And there is need for people in the US to be very, very careful on how they transact right now. Because if everything is shutting down, there are a lot of consequences for this. And most people are going to be affected, to be honest, with this matter. And you must be very, very careful because this is going to bring a lot of risks or consequences to the people of the US. Now, and first of all, the consequence will be non-essential federal operation halt. Now, there will be a closure of many operations that are led by federal government, those that are considered non-essential. And even if or even when they are considered non-essential, it must be remembered that they hold a very big population. Many people work there. Many people still depend on these things. So when the government is shutting down, it means the US citizens will have to miss some of the services that they used to enjoy. And the people who work there, they'll be forced to go on an unpaid leave, that you can stay at work and continue working but without a pay, or you can go home without a pay. So the choice is yours. How or when did we reach here? That's the biggest question. That most people saw this as a chance. They saw Donald Trump as the perfect savior for the US economy. Now, when things are collapsing, when things are not working out the way they expected, this actually becomes a problem. Most MAGA supporters are now feeling like they voted for the collapse of their own country. They voted to make the US great again. But the situation the US is at the moment is not that of a great country. You always see a great country when you live in one. You can always feel it. You can always feel the presence. But when all these things are happening, there are questions, and we must be very, very careful, because a lot of predictions have been made about the US. The US has been an oppressor of many races. It must be remembered that this is a country that has enslaved the black community for 400 years. They were here. They worked without being paid. They have never received their reparations. And this is an economic shutdown, because if the government is not able to reach a consensus with most of the lawmakers, it means the government cannot pass essential bills that will help you. And the president will not sign bills that are very important to the people, that have been developed and passed in the Congress. So when there is a wrangle between the executive and the Congress, it is the people who are going to suffer. And in this case, I'm very, very sad, because I know most of the people who voted for Donald Trump are going to suffer. Most of those who didn't vote for the same president are going to suffer. This reminds us, and this should tell us more, that we need to wake up, and we need not to depend on political games that have always been played, but focus as the people and leave alone the things that have destroyed us for centuries. We've always voted the same politicians. All they do is change their stance over time. They might change their parties, they might change their loyalties, but they still remain the same. They say it is forests that change, but the monkeys remain the same. The characters will remain the same. It is you who has you are being lied to believe that someone is coming to save you. You are being hoodwinked to think that there is a savior in the same person who committed a lot of crimes, a lot of atrocities, a person or people or the same parties that have always been in power but never changed your life. The political mindset is always that go lie to the people. They buy the lie. After getting you into the presidency, you'll start explaining to them the truth, how the system is not going to work, how the system was rigged, and all those stuff. So, and a short question is, do you really think that the black community could help stabilize the situation in the US at the moment? Now, I've been talking about the black silence that is happening in the US for a very long time. That after the election, most black folks went silent. Why did they go silent? That's the question, right? Now, they went silent because of so many other things. You remember during the election, people went to vote, and most of those who went to vote, they went to choose for a leader who they thought will come and punish the black community. They thought all the policies around Republicans was going to affect the black community. That's the little I know. But later on, the same policies they voted for are now affecting everyone. Now, most of them thought that the black community was going to work in the fields for them, and that as this happens, as they work in the fields for them, that everything else is going to fall on their side. Now, the black community is faring on well, silent and resilient at the same time. They have been in this game for a very long time. They have been facing these problems for a very long time. So they have chosen to keep quiet and not talk about the things that are happening in the US. And now you can see it from this perspective. When they keep quiet, now people will start asking, why aren't the black community talking? Why are they so silent? And what is it that it needs to be done for them to talk? They are forgetting that years later or years before this time, the black community has been very active and been talking for a very long time. They have been saying and complaining about the hardships in the US. The economy has not been doing good for a very long time. Oppression, police brutality, mass incarceration, so many things. It must be remembered. Now, when they were complaining about all these things, other people felt like they were being too much. The black community were complaining a lot. Now, after the 2024 elections and after Donald Trump was sworn in, most black people went silent. They went to focus on their lives because they felt like the system, the whole country has been against them for a very long time. So it is better to keep quiet and not to complain whenever or complaining without getting a solution. Now, they are quiet and the whole world is concerned about their silence. Now, do you really think their influence could change how things are happening in the US right now? Now, the electoral power and swing potential is very important in this case, and the black vote is a major block in many swing states and districts in the US, especially cities and certain key states. Now, parties and candidates know that mobilizing black voters can tip close races, and according to Pew, black adults overwhelmingly rate voting as the most effective strategy for progressing equality. Now, many people have been asking that why can't the black community complain? Why are they silent? Why can't they come out and talk on this evil that is happening in the US? But the black community has been talking for many years, but you try to shut them down? I don't know. But the black community is intact, and I feel like they're keeping quiet because they feel this is not their fight. They didn't bring this mess to the US. Now, why should they be at the forefront of fighting for something, of fighting someone they didn't bring in power? That has always been the argument. So, do you really think the US is going to get better? Or do you think the government is going to shut down? Or do you think this is just hot air? Maybe to get people away from the Epstein files that are coming in and we are seeing big names being involved? Let me know whatever you think of this video in the comment section. If it's your first time on this channel, please consider subscribing, sharing, commenting, and liking so that many people could stand a chance to see this video and resonate well and know whatever is happening and call out for black and brown unity and call for global unity also. Thank you so much. See you in our next episode.